need a little adventure in our lives, something that creates awe and inspiration. For me, I love to travel, and that's why I'm so excited to introduce to you today my guest, Dr. Stacy Funt. She is a radiologist, a coach, a global traveler, wife, and mother, and someone who believes deeply in the power of travel to transform us, mind, body, and soul. But first, let me tell you how I was introduced to Dr. Stacy Funt. One of my podcast listeners sent me another podcast where she was a guest, and as soon as I heard it, I said, "Oh my goodness, she is also trained in lifestyle medicine, and I have to have her on my podcast." I emailed her, she emailed me right back, and so here she is. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, first of all, tell us a little bit about LH Adventure Travel and what you do.
But so LH Adventure Travel, the LH stands for Lifestyle Health because it's all based on lifestyle medicine. And I'm still a practicing physician 2 days a week. And I have this tour operator company where I create these women's wellness adventure travels that all my itineraries contain four of the pillars of lifestyle medicine. So it's mainly women in their 40s through late 60s. And we move. Every trip has hiking. Some have e-biking, some have kayaking, but they all have hiking in these beautiful, awe-inspiring natural settings. They all have healthy whole foods. Sometimes we have food tours, sometimes we have cooking classes, sometimes it's farm to table meals, but they all have a component of whole foods. They all have a component of relaxation. Either we're staying in a spa or visiting a spa. We usually have a yoga class, something like that. Staying under the stars in the desert or forest bathing. And then to me, one of the biggest components is community. These are trips for women. Once in a while, I'll have a couples trip, but the majority are for women. And it's a great time for people to build sisterhood and come together in community who share values, who share the enjoyment of travel, being in diverse cultures, and being in these beautiful natural settings as we go on these adventures together.
That is so awesome. And someday I hope to go with you. I noticed you had a trip to Peru. That's a place that's on my bucket list. And I've actually done some solo traveling, meeting up with tour groups like this. And I have met the most incredible women and am still connected to them. And so I know why I like to travel, but I'd love to hear, why do you think that people love to travel and why is it important to travel if you're able?
Oh gosh, that's a talk in and of itself, right? To me, I mean, I think travel means different things to different people, right? And there's so many things we gain from travel, and I think everybody kind of has their own intention and what they'd like to get from it, right? For some people, first of all, travel is an incredible education in humanity to me, right? You get to meet people all over the globe, see how different people do it, and in the end, we're so similar. And I think that shared humanity and that connection to other people runs very, very deep. Also, we get to see more of the globe. Our planet is spectacular. It's absolutely spectacular. And to see new places, places we haven't seen before, creates that feeling of awe and wonder. And I think so, that's such a wonderful positive emotion. I think a lot of us are seeking something new, something exciting, and something that takes us out of our daily routine, right? So a big part of travel is a reset. A lot of people come on my trips when they're in transition, a milestone birthday, just became empty nesters, things like that. Because to step out of our daily life, to step out of our routine into this little microcosm of another world where we get to kind of take a look at what's going on. We get to step out of whatever maybe is unpleasant and go into this whole new world to reconnect with ourselves and everything around us, I think is a really incredible opportunity of growth and joy. And mindfulness. I always joke with my husband that if we want to live longer, we just travel more. Because when you travel, right, a 5-day trip can feel like 2 weeks. Time expands. And I think part of that is because we're so awake to the moment. We're so present because things are new, experiences are new. We're doing things we haven't done before. We're with people we haven't been before, and we're paying attention. Also when we travel, it's usually vacation, right? So it's a time to just relax, unwind, do for yourself, especially women. I think so much of our lives are geared towards taking care of things, checking off the boxes, doing for everyone else, managing. When we travel, that's a break from that, right? It's a time to just be present in our own lives and wake up to what's around us and what we want and how we feel. And I mean, I could just go on and on and on. And then the community component, I guess about half the women maybe come with a friend, about half the women come alone. It doesn't really matter. When you come in an organized group like that, it's an opportunity to meet all new people,
Mhm.
kind of have that blank slate where no one knows much about you and you just present that. We all have different parts of ourselves, right? So you let those parts out that you want to. And it's just refreshing and healing and transformative and fun and exciting and all those things.
I love that perspective so much, and you hit the nail on the head, especially for me. The season in my life when I traveled alone was a season that I had come out of a tremendous amount of pain. I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis about 10 years ago, and I was very handicapped, and that ended my career as an OB-GYN doctor. Shortly after that, I got a divorce after 30 years. And so I was single for about 6 to 7 years. I'm remarried now, so I travel with my husband. And those 6 to 7 years, that's when I did some trips alone and actually slept in the desert under the stars, like you're talking about. And like you said, those experiences are so awe inspiring. And we don't get a lot of awe in our day to day life. But I will tell you that when I travel, I have a problem. The wellness is not always a component of it. Often when I travel, the diet goes out
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
window, the activity level goes out the window, the stress goes down,
Yeah. Mhm.
but the wellness aspect of it is not usually incorporated in the trips that
Yes.
I've been on.
Yes. And, that was part of my thinking because, like, so often you go home and need to diet, it's been like gluttony or whatever. And, there's no food police on my trips. Everyone can have exactly what they want, but the intention is self-care, and I can accommodate vegan or vegetarian the intention is to take care of ourselves, and that is a part of the conversation, a part of the dialogue, and then it's support from other women who want to do the same, and the movement is a huge piece. It really is. I always get different level hiking guides. It's not like we're racing up Kilimanjaro or anything like that, but I don't know about you. When I'm moving, I feel better. I'm naturally more inclined to take care of myself. So, and that also can counterbalance all the gelato that we had in Tuscany, you know, but just the whole pieces together really support well-being. And, these adventures are about taking care of ourselves and connecting with our own desires. And, I do certain exercises during the trip for those who want to. I'm a train coach as well. And, I do one thing where everybody shares a brag, a gratitude, and a desire. It's called Trinities. We go around over dinner and there's a response we all give when people share that. And it's so interesting listening to people because for women, definitely the two hardest, the brag could be really hard and the desire could be
Mhm.
really hard. The gratitude is easy. Everybody has lots that they're grateful for. But to stand up and say what I want and to stand up and say, I'm so proud of myself for this, that can be so much harder. And it's all to me tied into the concept of self care and well being and authentic living and, showing up in life the way we really want to. So,
It's good training for when you get back home for sure. And
yeah.
you said you're not the food police, but do you do any training before you go about this intentionality? And do you encourage people to disconnect from
Yeah,
this?
I do. So all of those. So first of all, I don't have a join now button. I Zoom one on one with everyone. At this point. It takes a lot of time, but it works out really well because it is a physical trip and because we're small group. I usually have a max of 12 or 14. I want to make sure it's the right match for the other person, that they understand fully what the trip is, the level of activity, the level of movement, all that. And in that, I go through the components of the trip and lifestyle medicine and the intentions. So people who sign up are already in that frame of mind. And then there's a series of emails, and then like a month before, I have a live Zoom meeting, sometimes 2 weeks before the trip, and we go over everything there. But I specifically talk about the internet and the connectedness. Like, a few people have asked if they can bring computers, and if you have to bring it because of work, because not everybody can fully disconnect on a 10-day trip, then I ask it be limited to the room. That we not have it out in public. And I stress the reason why, because we don't usually get these chances of unplugging like this, and it does take us away from being present. And I don't want it interrupting anybody else on the trip who wants to be unplugged for the week, so we do address that. And in terms of the food, like they know the intention of the trip. And then of course it's up to them. But, I pick places that offer, whatever anybody would want, pretty much, to stay on the food plan that they're comfortable with if they want to. I did have a vegan in Peru eat the alpaca sausage, because it was just one of those rare moments. And, she was like, when in Rome,
I kind of love that.
she just had one little bite, just to taste it, and we were all thrilled for her because it was more like a health and wellness thing that she was vegan, and she felt this is one rare little moment of an opportunity she will probably never have again, and she wanted to experience that, and she felt great about that choice, and that was good for her.
That's awesome. So, like I said, I travel a lot as well, and everybody always asks me this question, and I honestly never know how to answer it. But do you have a favorite destination?
Oh gosh, that's a really hard question.
I can't answer
I,
that.
I can't either, because I've had different moments in my life. Like when I was younger, when I was like 28 or something, I went on a journey by myself before the internet with my backpack and my Lonely Planet guide to Tanzania. And I showed up there and ended up on a camping safari. And it was one of the most magical times of my whole life. It was a spiritual experience, that journey. Not all of it was fun. The beginning was challenging, but that was one of the most impactful journeys of my lifetime. It really was. But, then we had a family trip in Ireland that was just like our best moments with our kids. Or, I've had incredible adventures with my business with groups of women. So, it, there's so many different ways of answering that. I couldn't really pick one.
So, if someone was interested in going on one of these trips with you, what would be their first steps? Where would they find you, and how do they go about that?
All they would do is look at my website, LH Adventure Travel, and I have a thing of adventures. I clearly have my mission. I have about me. I have a lot of information on different pages that I think you can get the vibe of the trips and the mission. And if it aligns with you, every page has a reach out, just call, just send me an email. And anyone who wants to go, we just have a short Zoom meeting. Sometimes for some trips, I have a pre-recording of more information. This way, I think it's kind of important just to get to meet the person you're traveling with on a small group. This way, they get to learn more. And then we just set up a Zoom. And, if they're good and everything's good, then it's easy enough to just sign up from there. And I give them all the next steps.
Do you ever have any conflict? Because sometimes when you get a group of women together, you can have some conflict. And I've been on large trips where our little small groups kind of found each other. And then I've been on small trips where you're stuck with who you're stuck with.
Right.
And it was a beautiful experience, but sometimes there are different dynamics, and I can imagine would even be some difficult dynamics.
Well, I'm gonna knock wood. And this is why I'm hesitant to stop Zooming with everyone. Maybe it's because of this, I don't know, but I've been so fortunate. I've had the most amazing group of women. Over 50% sign up for another trip or on the waiting list for another trip. And I opened up Andalusia, within 2 days that was sold out. And it was all people from Guatemala and Morocco and all people from prior trips. As soon as they saw a new trip come out, 3 times now, I've put women together, or they've just gone, because sometimes people want to share a room, or they just came on their own and met each other. 3 times now, 2 separate women from one trip have signed up to be roommates on a future trip, and it's just worked out great. I mean, just knock wood, I have not had the issue. The only issue I did have that I learned a lot from was my first trip to Morocco. That was my very first trip. Normally, I visit every place before I go now. I meet the local operators. I choose everything. Sometimes when people plan trips, they just get a company in the country. That company plans what they want, and then they go on the trip, and it's the first time they're seeing it. I go there first. I pick all my local tour operators. I put the trips together. I look at the hotel. I just decide the way. I mean, I've been a traveler my whole life, so I'm very comfortable doing that, and it just aligns with the experience I want to offer and the level of comfort I want to have as I offer it. And so Morocco was the my first trip I did that I had not gone to first. That's the only one I had not visited first. It's a long story how I got there. I was in Nepal. I've been thinking of doing this travel business for years and years and years. I'm hiking in Nepal, getting over my kids leaving for college, and my twins left at once, and my father passing away. And I just knew it was time to do it. And I knew Morocco was going to be my first trip. So I did that trip not having been there before. And there was also that big earthquake 3 weeks before my trip, right through the area we were going to go. So I had to reroute it. So I was very inexperienced. It was my first trip. All the women were lucky, lovely. What I didn't realize about Morocco is that it's home goods on steroids and everything is authentic, right? So I had some women, that 2 women in particular that really wanted to shop a lot, way more out of proportion than the rest of the group, or one woman who wasn't interested in shopping. So it wasn't that there were personality conflicts, but that was challenging for me to deal with as an inexperienced tour operator the first time in a country. And I did learn a lot from that. Now I have a half a day free in Morocco. Now I set the guidelines right at the beginning. Now I know where to put that, because some people love to shop, but some don't, so now I've certainly learned how to accommodate that. But that was the biggest conflict that I've had on my trips.
Why are we not surprised that shopping would be the source of conflict for women?
I mean, I since learned, now, like, also every city, even in Peru, every trip I go to, there's a block of time in each new place for just wandering. Some people like to sit and
Oh,
have
yeah.
coffee in cafes. Some want to
Mhm.
take pictures. Some want to shop. And I want each woman to have the experience they want to have. You know what it is coming into it. So you want it to be aligned. But I think it's really important to have free time. Anyone who travels alone, we have a WhatsApp group. Everyone becomes friends. Like Tuscany and Peru, I just did in the last month. And those women were just phenomenal. They're planning private dinners, they're planning new trips, they're planning, so even in free time, everybody would say, I'm going here. Anybody want to join? But I think it's really important to have the freedom to be outside of the group if you need time alone, and I have a welcome meeting at the beginning of every trip in the location, where I also stress, do you, like, if you want to wear the same clothes every day, you want to dress to the nines, you want to join everything, you want to sleep through some things, I really encourage people to have the experience that they want to have. As long as they let me know, and they know where they could take the breaks and where they can't.
That's really a beautiful and amazing experience. And I have one last question for you. Does anyone ever experience reverse culture shock? When you spend some time in another country that has a very different culture, and you're eating very different foods and hearing different sounds and smells and sights, and maybe even if there's an economic gap between where you live and the country you visit, then sometimes when you come back and you look up and you're like, good grief, what are we doing here?
Yeah, well, the term for that we coin is reentry, right? Reentry is a process for many different reasons. And the last thing you mentioned when you say, good grief, what are we doing here? I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that's one of the gifts of travel, to give you a new perspective on the abundance we have here, and maybe what's needed and not needed. And I've had people come back from a trip and quit a job, or make really tremendous changes based on how they feel and what they want. But also, in my groups, and I'm sure other groups do this as well, we have a WhatsApp group, that we communicate with. I mean, over 2 years later, those groups are still going. So when people first come back, everybody who orders rugs and they get delivered or the olive oil gets delivered, things like that, everybody shares it on the group and people post, "I miss you," or, I think it kind of helps with that reentry phase that you haven't fully let go of that group and that dynamic and that experience as you're moving back into your regular life. But I personally believe, just my beliefs, I don't believe we pick a trip. I feel a trip picks us. And I believe every adventure we go on, we're changed in some way, whether it's big or small, moving forward, which I think is what we want. It's part of the reason that we travel. So if it feels a little bit uncomfortable moving back, that's just a readjustment and an opportunity to kind of make any shifts that you want to in your regular life back home.
Yeah, and I think that connection that lasts, and I've had that as well, sort of validates your experience
Yes.
because when you're caught up in the moment and then you get home and you're like, "Whoa, was that even legit?"
Yeah.
And when you have someone to say, "Oh, remember when we were in that rug store?" Or, you've got some little memento and you have someone that you can reminisce and just validate the entire
Yeah,
experience.
like Guatemala 2 years ago, that was such a beautiful trip, and one of the women just put together a trip for whoever wants to join to Yosemite, and a bunch of people are now going with her. She lives close by, so it just that makes me really happy. Makes me
Yeah,
really happy when people form new friendships and form new connections that last. I mean, I feel like part of the reason we're here is connection, so
absolutely.
yeah.
And it's a great big world to explore. So I know you have lots of adventures coming up, and I hope that people will go to your website and at least check it out and at
Yeah.
least
I
consider.
also have, I am a certified health coach and I trained as a life coach. So I put all that material onto my website. If you look on my website, there's a resource tab. And then once you click on that, there's one for travel, one for food, one for exercise, there's like a million different things. And like on the food, I have links to my favorite recipe blogs all over the place. And under travel, I have all the CDC links for vaccines, and I have safety information, and I have packing lists, and there's really a lot of information. Even if people aren't interested in my particular trips, I think there's some really great information for travel and just for lifestyle medicine if anybody wants it. I'm so happy when people use resources, and I have my old coaching sheets for behavior change and all those kind of things. So it's a nice,
Well, that is fantastic, and I will include links to your website on the show notes of this episode because I think that's such a seamless perspective of reset and reframe and recharge,
yeah,
whether you've traveled or not.
yeah.
So, thank you so much for sharing your passion for all of the things lifestyle and all of the things travel.
Thanks so much. It was great talking.
Well, I don't know about you, but that makes me want to pack my bags and travel. If you're looking for some adventure in your life, then you're going to want to go to lhadventuretravel.com and learn more.